Fielders all the way, playing proper football, the Chef United way. Ale, 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 ale.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a bit of an impromptu live stream here. I wasn't expecting to do this. The guys that I've got online with me wasn't expecting to do this. I think I gave them about an hour's grace. But we've got three strapping, lovely young men to talk about Chris Wilder tonight, which is, like I said, not something we expected. So reports came out today that the powers that be at Sheffield United are currently deciding on whether or whether not to relieve Chris Wilder and his team of his duties. It's a bit of a weird one because he signed a new contract recently that runs until 2028. And he's obviously been given this rebuild to do, but that was through the former owner, Prince Abdullah. We're going to chat about that. All of this in a second because we have got new owners. They may have new ideas. But yeah, it's I wasn't expecting this at all because obviously the club came out with a bit of a statement. It had Chris Wilder in there, and I'm going to bring Cal in first and foremost, not just because you were the most on time out of everyone, but also that you were talking about that statement and we were saying how great that statement was. But it did have Chris Wilder in there, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it seemingly was straight away after the final as well, which was even I suppose really it's the most vocal they've been really, at times since taking over. But it did come out, and Chris was included in it, and seemingly for me that kind of answered the question really. Straight after the playoff final, whether Wilder would be the manager going into next season. So I'm as surprised as you are, and maybe some others that we're even having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring Ewan in as well next. So Ewan, do you think that this would even be a conversation if Prince Abdullah was still the owner?
Well, I think when Prince Abdullah and his board were in charge, I think we'd always complained that there wasn't much communication with the fans. And obviously with the new ownership, American model, it's a bit different, isn't it, in terms of communication? So I think jumping right to it in terms of reevaluating the season, I don't think it's unusual for them to do that, have a sit down before the season starts and just make sure everyone's aligned in terms of where they want to go and where they want to be. I think it also puts into context the finish to the season as well. You could say with those 3 games we lost on the trot, whether if the performances and the results have been slightly different, we might have still finished 3rd, but it might have given a different perspective and slant on things. So, I'm not surprised at the sort of news that's come out in terms of having a sit down and just seeing where everyone's at. But yeah, I think it's in terms of taking it back to the Prince point. It's just a different model of ownership and way of communicating with the fans than we've had before.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring the final guest in for today. That's Dylan. How are you doing, Dylan? You all right, mate?
Good evening. Very well. Good to be here. How is everyone?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. So let's get cracking on into it. So first and foremost, Dylan, Chris Wilder administered a bit of a rebuild, you could say. Well, it was a massive rebuild, probably the biggest rebuild in my lifetime. He did a good job, though, didn't he?
Well, he won 92 points across the season. So, yeah, we could say he did a good job. I thought he did incredibly well. I mean, I find it, if there is any truth behind what people are saying and that they're going to evaluate him and decide whether to keep him or not, I think that's kind of crazy. He is 100%. I'm 100% Wilder in.
Good. I'm glad. Let's nail our colours to the mast now because I'm exactly the same as you, Dylan. I walked out of the ground at Wembley. I was a little bit downbeat, and I will be honest with you. Straight away, I was slightly Wilder out, but that was me having too much to drink. That was me just being really disappointed about us throwing it away, really, in my opinion. But after I've had time to think about it, in my opinion, I don't think there's anybody else better right now to take us, well, get us that one step further. What about you, Ewan?
Yeah, I'm Wilder in, and I think what he's only had 2 transfer windows really to try and rebuild the team, and
Well, he's had a lot.
So-
He's had a lot more than that, Ewan. He's been our manager a long time, hasn't he?
well, you know what I mean. Since he came back,
No Richard Stearman this time.
No, and I think they always say if you should get at least 3 or 4 windows to see how your team evolves. But at least window, see what he does with it. And yeah, I think it would be a bit premature just to get someone else in now. I think you've got to give him more time.
Yeah, agreed. Do you know what? There's somebody in the comments, if I can find him here, Chris Eads, that was saying he was Wilder out actually, but I can't find him at the moment. Cal, oh well, Ewan, are you in or out?
In.
Cal, are you shaking it all about?
Yeah, for now, yeah, I am Wilder, and I think the lads have hit on the main points. Obviously, we can't discount the season, with the points tally that Dylan's mentioned. I think Ewan's hit the nail on the head. Not only with kind of the transfer windows that he says he's not actually had that many, to rebuild an entire squad, but we also have to take into account that there's been 2 different ownerships. As well, within those. The thing that worries me is have they had a meeting and they've said, well, this is the direction, because they've clearly said that there is a new direction that they kind of want to take the club with the AI and analytics and all that kind of stuff. So maybe they're thinking, is he the right person for that? We don't know, but I think he needs to have an opportunity of a full summer transfer window with that kind of new regime as well. So for now, albeit with some adaptations, I'm Wilder in.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we all are, because I thought that was a bit ridiculous when I first saw it earlier on. But as Ewan said, it might just be they're just reevaluating what's going on, and it might not actually be. None of them might have anything in their head that they want to get rid of Wilder. Maybe they just want to tweak a few bits and bobs, and this has come out a bit unexpectedly. So I know we've mentioned it and touched on it a little bit, how Wilder's done this season. He's amassed 92 points and well, if you look at the league table, 90. But we were never really going to be touching the top 2 in the end. But it's still been a fantastic season. I think out of the last 10 years, either 7 or 8 times we would have got promoted with 90 or 92 points. So I think it just shows how incredible Leeds and Burnley have done this season. So, Dylan, he's done a really good job. We all know that. But there has been times this season where he's maybe not made the right decisions substitute-wise. And I know it's easy to say that after the fact. But are there any ones that kind of speak to you, or things that you feel like he'd done wrong at the time? I know we've obviously had the final and a few bits and bobs didn't quite go our way. So is that something that sticks in your mind?
I do think that Wilder's a bit too stubborn. I think at times this season we've seen him try and stick with things for a bit too long that aren't working when he should just hold his hands up and say, yeah, I've got that wrong. I'm going to change this now while I've got the chance. I mean, the main one for me, with hindsight, I will say, with hindsight, is bringing Campbell off in the final. Looking back now, that seems like a really, really bad substitution, and one of the things that changed the game in Sunderland's favour. But yeah. So I still trust Wilder. I trust his team selection. I just think that subs have always been sort of his weakness, like his ability to change a game, like his first spell at the club. There were times when it just seemed like if the game wasn't going the right way, he'd just throw on an extra striker and not really have that plan B of moving to a different system and shuffling the tactics and just adjusting it. He would just go, right, okay, we'll just go a bit more attack. Am I putting this forward on? I think the substitutions are something that needs to improve him.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree. I think I'm not going to go to Ewan and Cal with this one. I would like to actually bring up the comment on screen. He's a blade through and through, surely not. And I get that, but at the same time, do we just love managers from this region and just feel like they get it? They get Sheffield United. It didn't work out with Slavisa Jokanovic, and it's not worked out with others. But do we need to stop being so precious with, people that have played for Sheffield United and been around that squad, Ewan?
Yeah, I think you just got to get the best person for the job, haven't you? Regardless of ties and affinity to the club. You just got to look on. I think from the board's perspective, they're wanting to perhaps play a certain way, and recruit in a certain way. So I'd imagine the discussions they're going to be having with Wilder is, do they align? Do they fit together in that sense? So, I'm not sort of too caught up in the whole Blade link thing and being from the area, from ball boy to player to manager. It's got to be on whether they're good enough for the job. And in my opinion, in terms of what Wilder's done, he is still the man for the job. But obviously, he's got a big season ahead, and things can move quickly in football.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I'm going to move on to Cal to talk about Chris's point here. We've got the transfer window opening very, very shortly. I'm guessing that's the reason why they've kind of had to come out and say that they're having a chat with Chris Wilder, because Chris might want to go in a different direction when it comes to recruitment. What is your opinion on, because we should have really had all our targets lined up, whether we're going up or going down. Do you think that's what they're thinking about doing? Like, we need to get him in quickly and make these decisions now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If they're going to move on, bring in a guy who, they feel is going to, kind of take them in that direction that they want to, he's going to need as much time as possible. We've all seen. I've seen reports this week that there's already quite a few free transfers, lining up already. And in terms of the transfer window, really you're going to be talking to those guys now, because their contracts are at the end of June. We saw in the retained list with Brewster, we're obviously still in discussions with him because, his contract is up in less than a month, really, isn't it? So they are going to want to bring in someone quickly. And I think if it is that they want to move on from Wilder and go in a different direction, or, not kind of the same direction that Chris wants to go in, then they're going to want to bring in a guy as soon as possible to kind of get to know the squad, get to know who he wants to keep, and bring in the players that he wants. But I agree with whichever one of you said it, that I don't think the targets would have changed too much. Jimmy Dunn, just to pick out a name, for example, that's one I've seen this week. I think we would have probably tried to go for him if we'd have gone up or not. But again, it's going to be interesting now to just see kind of where we go from here. Whether it is like, we've just had a chat at the end of the season and we're all aligned, we're all moving forward, and it's plan as normal, or whether it's going to be a big shake-up.
Yeah, obviously I want Wilder to stay. I think if it was down to me, the main reason why I would keep Wilder is mostly because, one, he knows the team really well. It seemed when I went to the Player of the Year, they all seem to be like, we love Wilder. We absolutely we sing from the same hymn sheet. You can see after. I remember speaking to a Wednesday fan, and they were talking about, I think it was the game before they played us, that they were all like huddled around at the end of the game, and it's like, we do that every week, every single time away from home. They're all together. They're all singing and chanting to the fans. And I know it's because we've won a lot of games last season, but they all seemed very much together. And I think bringing someone else in right now could really, make that kind of stunt a little bit. So, in my opinion, I'd like to see him stay. But this season, I want an answer from all of you. Has he overachieved, underachieved, or done what's expected of him? I'll start with you, Dylan.
Points, I'd say overachieved. Performance, but based on points, he's overachieved what he's deserved. I'd say, like based on how well we've played this season, I don't think that we deserve to win that many points. But I think in general, he's massively overperformed what I expected of him, considering the rebuild, considering all the new players and everything. So in general, I say that he's overachieved and that he's done really well and impressed me this season.
Yeah, what about you, Ewan?
I think he's overachieved. I think when you consider where we were last season, how flat the performances were, just the whole feeling around the ground coming out of matches, it was pretty awful. To rally the troops, rally the crowd, get a better squad together, and actually be really competitive for the top two against a really good lead side and a really dogged and determined Burnley side. I mean, you got to give credit for him for that. Yes, the performances hasn't been Hullett sexy football, but which we'd all like to see, and I would like to see. But we've got the job done in a lot of games, even when you think to that period, was it before Christmas when we were down on numbers and we were still grinding out results? I think it might have been after the Arbastor injury. We're still picking up wins, and I'm like, how are we doing this? So, yeah, he's overachieved for me. Yes, we didn't get promoted, but I think we'll be better for it next season, all being well.
Okay, would you just unplug your mic and plug it back in, you, and we can hear you, but it's a bit funny at the moment. So I'll go to you, Cal. For a clean sweep, has he overachieved, underachieved, or done what's expected?
I kind of think it's a mixture of all three. Weirdly, I think
I'm so glad you've not just said overachieved, because I was going to have to add some Billy Balance in there, if not. But yeah, keep going, mate. Keep going.
Yeah, I think the lads have obviously hit on the main points as to why. The points tally. You've said, Nate. 9 times out of 10, that many points, you're going to go up even from the championship. But then for me, it's the performances where he's underachieved. I think we'll maybe talk about signings later on. I think as the season's gone on, I think signings have possibly underachieved a little bit for me. Only a select few, but for me, it is a little bit of mixture of everything. In terms of kind of what we've had to deal with. Ewan's touched on injuries. Obviously, there's been some huge personal issues for the club. Obviously, with George, I've never really kind of known a season like it, in that respect. Obviously there's an Arbastor, everything. So I think for me, it's a mixture of all three. Because if you look at the kind of the squad as a whole, yes, it was a massive rebuild, but in terms of the players and the championship caliber that some of these players had, even when they came to us, it's maybe some could argue, big budget. Obviously, some will argue, well, you should have been there, you should have been up there, and yes, you gave Burnley and Leeds until the end of the season, but I do think it's a mixture of all three, weirdly, and the performances are kind of what's brought that down for me in terms of underachieving and overachieving.
Okay, mate, I like that. There's also you've touched on their signings, but we'll come to that in a second. Dylan, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Has Wilder been good enough in the big moments? Because obviously we played the top, ignoring ourselves, first, second, and fourth. We've played Leeds twice, lost twice. Played Burnley twice, lost twice. We played Sunderland 3 times and lost twice. Has he been good enough in the big moments in the big games?
No, I don't think he has, sadly. Like, going into those games, and especially going into the Wednesday games as well, everyone said Wilder's the man we want in charge for these big moments. Like, he understands, he will know how to motivate these players for these big games, whatever. But the results against these better sides just have not been there. And I think part of that is because Burnley and Leeds have just been incredibly good. Like, when have the top two both got 100 points before? Like, that just doesn't happen. They have been incredibly good, but also not getting any points off of them has been disappointing. And against most of the playoff sides, excluding a few odd games, like he has disappointed in a lot of those big games.
Yeah, there were a couple of games where he really got them up for it, like Coventry at home, Middlesbrough at home. Those games that we really
ones as well.
And
both the Bristol City ones, and they're ultimately the ones that have mattered the most because they're like standalone games that will decide whether we get to final or not, rather than a league game that's part of a much bigger picture. So I was really impressed by how well we did in those playoff games compared to similar games earlier in the season, like similar important games. That like how professionally we handled Bristol City twice in a row was something that was really incredible compared to the games against Burnley and Leeds that we had in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Ewan, we'll move on to you. Hopefully, we've got your you got your good mic back. So signing wise, there's not just signings though. Is Wilder getting the best out of the players that he's got at his disposal? I think a lot of people have been talking about Gus Harmer playing on the left all season, Ryan Brewster playing on the right when he's a striker, playing in the 10 when you've got Callum O'Hare on the bench and things like that. Obviously, he's the one that sees them day in, day out. But what's your opinion on all that?
Well, firstly, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I think in terms of where players have played positionally, I've kind of liked Brewster where he's been playing. I think when he's sort of up top, it's too much for him to shoulder, too much responsibility. Perhaps doesn't quite have the nous to be an out-and-out striker. We've seen Brereton Diaz not be played in off the left because of that's been Harmer's position all season. And then there's been the debate, hasn't there, as to whether Harmer should be the number 10 rather than O'Hare. Look, at the end of the day, we've accumulated 90. Actually, it's 92 points, isn't it?
92, 90 on the board. Yeah.
Yeah. So that speaks for itself in terms of where Wilder's chosen to play players and how it's worked. So it's all well and me good saying such and such should have played there and we should have done that. You can't really argue too much when you think about the points on the board.
No, and really, I'm going to sound like I'm Wilder out here and I'm being really negative. But actually, if we all just said what we thought and were really positive, this would be a really boring stream. So I'm just trying to get, all the everything out there. I feel like with the signings, Cal, we've signed some really good players, but in January, not a lot of the players that we signed actually played too much football, other than I think Hamza. Brereton Diaz obviously had a bit of a starring role, really, because you think Brereton Diaz had a really poor sort of second half of the season for the Blades coming in, but he actually scored 4 goals and created 3 goals, which is pretty good compared with looking at the numbers of the players that have been playing all season. But do we think that we got January a bit wrong with the players that we brought in?
Potentially, I think it's clear that they probably didn't get the targets they wanted in January. I think the Suter injury obviously threw an absolute spanner in the works. In terms of, we kind of went into January not thinking we'd need a central defender to just saying that get Ancelotti. So I think the Suter, that kind of changed all the plans. It's been well reported that they tried to sign Jimmy Dunn, for example. I'm sure it's Dunn. Is it Jimmy? I'm sure it is.
Yeah, Jimmy Dunn. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so they tried to sign him in January, contrary to reports. But obviously QPR wanted too much money, which seemed a bit cheeky, seeing as though he was out of contract in June. But that's that's a discussion for their podcast. But I think it's maybe not so that they got it wrong. I think it's like, well, if we're not going to get the targets we want, we're not going to go out and rush. And maybe that was the Holding signing and the reason why, because that's been an argument, between Blades fans. Should Holding have been playing more? For me, when he's come in, for example, he's looked very, very sturdy at the back. But then is it a fitness issue? He's not played a lot of football. Was it? It's like you said, he sees them every day. So I suppose with January, we'll kind of never really know whether it was more so, look, we didn't get the targets we wanted, or did we get it wrong? It's just a matter of opinions. I mean, I'm surprised as well with the amount of Blades fans. Brereton Diaz is kind of like Marmite. I'm a big fan of Brereton Diaz. I think he's coming on loan again and has assisted, like you said, and scored a couple of goals. But I didn't realise how kind of 50-50 certain Blades fans were on him, which I found quite interesting. But for me personally, I look on more on the side that we possibly, not that we didn't get it wrong, it's that we didn't get the targets we wanted, and they didn't just want to go out and bring anybody in just because we didn't get the targets.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up. Obviously, we're going to talk about who else there is out there because I suppose we've got to. But also, I've not even thought about this. I've not even thought who could come in. The one name in my mind has always been Steve Cooper, and he's currently not got a job. And he's been there, done that. He's done really well on lower budgets with kind of Swansea, for instance, and then obviously got Forest promoted. So I think he's the number one person on everybody's lips. But also, I just wanted to bring up Simon's comment here about Wilder's temperament. And it's not just Wilder's temperament, it's the player's temperament as well. Mostly the player's temperament, in all honesty, because we've been fined a lot of money this season, more and more and more and more money. And we've got into a lot of scuffles this year. And I don't know whether this is just a bit of a crazy year when a lot of things have kind of, bubbled over and it won't happen next season. But Dylan, have you got any sort of comments on Wilder's temperament, or do you think it's a good thing? Because we all love Wilder, giving it to Wednesday fans, and he's very passionate. But do you think his passion gets gets too much sometimes?
Well, I think the first thing to say is with all the fines, maybe that's just what happens when you give Jack Robinson the captain's armband. Maybe that's just part of Jack Robinson's character. But Wilder probably does need to rein it in a slight bit and try and keep a cool head a bit more, and try and think about things maybe slightly more logically, and a bit less like heart on his sleeve, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say really without knowing like Wilder's psychology and being able to hear him during the games and know exactly what he's thinking. I mean, I'm a big fan of like Wilder going to the pub with the fans and singing songs after big wins, like he did after the Wednesday games, whatever. I'm a big fan of that side of it. Shows that he's staying really in touch with the fans and the club. But in game, maybe he could manage it slightly better, I'd say.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like if every manager would talk like really kind of professional, it'd be so boring. If every manager was exactly the same, all media trained and said the same things, it would be so boring. So it's good to have someone like that who wears his heart on his sleeve, as you say. Now, the final question that I'm going to ask you all is from Kieran here. Who would you take if Wilder has to go? Now, again, we're all saying we're at Wilder in. So if anyone's just joining us right now, we are not saying we want Wilder gone. Let's see who we can bring in. I'm going to steal Steve Cooper straight away because I've got no other names. So has anybody else got any other names? And please, anyone in the comments, pop it in the comments other than Mickey Adams. We don't want Mickey Adams in. Dylan, I bet you don't even remember Mickey Adams, do you?
No, not at all.
Go on then, Dylan. We'll start with you. Have you got any other ideas of managers that you might want to bring in?
Well, is Warnock still retired? Can we get him out of retirement?
I said no more Sheffield-born managers.
Steve Cooper's the only one that I would even think about, unless someone obvious that I'm missing. But apart from that, I can't see any like really viable options that we could go for right now, unless we were going to poach someone from a different club.
Beat me to it.
I've never even thought about Rob Edwards. Do you know what? Stranger things have happened. I said with Hal on the prediction, the championship predictions reaction, that Rob Edwards will go to someone and do really, really well, despite the last season at Luton. Ewan, have you got anyone that you'd like to throw in there?
David Weir, he's available.
Here we go. Is he available? What's he doing these days?
I think he's like a technical manager somewhere, back room, whatever.
Someone said
Ancelotti earlier as a joke, but this is
don't but. Someone says we should sign Philip Coutinho the other day, and I was just like, what are we doing?
His son was obviously the assistant manager, and he's wanting to go into management. And I've read some stuff about him getting a job somewhere, so it wouldn't be on. If they were looking to change, and he's looking for a step up somewhere. They might think, English Championship. But so, the name Ancelotti wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility, but it probably would be his son.
No, before we move on, Cal, Sean Dyche.
No, I mean, sorry, go on, man.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, he did quite well at Everton in the Premier League, and he's always done well in the Championship. But is that just going backwards?
I mean, in terms of, kind of some fans have not always enjoyed the football this year. you'd probably like it even less. But that's my opinion on Toronto. He's done a great job where he's been, but no, would he get us over the line? The guy in the comments actually beat me to it. Rob Edwards would be, that kind of younger kind of manager coming up. On the Steve Cooper situation, a good friend of mine is a Gary O'Neill's another good shout actually. On the Steve Cooper one, a good friend of mine is a Leicester fan, and albeit he wasn't there for a long time, but kind of the conversations I'd have with him, kind of when Cooper was manager, did not get a great feel for him personally. Again, subs was a big issue for Cooper apparently when he was at Leicester. So for me, I suppose I've been kind of from having a mate who's a Leicester fan, I've kind of not really wanted Cooper to come in.
Right.
Rob Edwards, oh no, not Sam Allardyce. Rob Edwards is one. There's Ruben Sellers. Riccinia was one that I've always kind of thought about, but I think he's somewhere else now and doing quite well. So,
I think, yeah.
So we'd obviously have to pay them to kind of to take him in, but I think everyone's going to have a different opinion on who it would be, but for me, Rob Edwards would probably be the one that I'd want to give a go to, considering how well he did, at Luton and stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's wrap it up there talking about manager, because I don't want anyone else to be manager other than Chris Wilder. In my opinion, I feel like Chris Wilder's got the players all singing off the same hymn sheet. I feel like I've seen it before where you bring in a manager and change the philosophy midway through parachute payments, and it never goes well. I feel like this season we need to get promoted. We need to get promoted because the third season, the parachute payments are so little. So yeah, if anyone's going to get us back up, and Leeds did it, didn't they? Because Leeds missed out the season after they won the division. I know we're in a different place to Leeds with money wise, but they stuck with the same manager, and they managed to do it. So fingers crossed. In my opinion, that Chris Wilder stays as Sheffield United manager, and he gets us promoted once again. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me this evening. Thanks everyone in the comments for joining us and giving your opinion on managers that we should get in, like Wayne Rooney, and Ewan that said David Weir, wasn't it? Shocking. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Ale, ale, ale.